Hey everybody, we are back with another episode of Can't Stop Snapping, the official podcast of MarvelSnapZone.com. We are at the beginning of a new month, a new season, so we are always excited to talk about the new season pass, the new season pass card, the good, the bad, and we've got some interesting topics today. And today I'm joined by two guests. Always love to have two guests on the show. Returning guest, Den. Den, thanks for being here.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you back on. And first-time guest, Ninaisnoob. Nina, glad to have you here.
Hi, how's it going?
Going great. Very grateful to have both of you on. It's the afternoon for you guys. It's the morning for me. So glad we can make this work. Before we jump in, normally we always like to give guests just a minute to kind of introduce themselves, their background with gaming, content creation, Marvel Snap. So Nina, it's your first time on. Just would love to let you introduce yourself to the listeners of the podcast.
Sure. Hi, my name is Ninaisnoob, and I'm a content creator for Marvel Snap. I make videos on YouTube and I also stream on Twitch. And you can find me at everything/Ninaisnoob. I used to be a Hearthstone Battlegrounds main for 2 years actually. And then in November last year, I tried Marvel Snap and I haven't looked back really. People really know me for my Galactus shorts. I don't know why, but people always think that I'm a huge Galactus player. But I'm not. I'm really not. If you look at my boosters, I only have like 400 or something.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people will follow a similar path, right? They tried out Marvel Snap and they just have continued down that path. So we're glad to have both of you on here. But we will dive into our topic. So again, it is a new season. So we always talk about the season pass card first. Nebula is a 1-cost, 1-power card that gains 2 power every turn. I'll read it exactly how it's written. Each turn your opponent doesn't play a card here, plus 2 power, except the turn you play this. So if you play her on turn 1, optimal play, you get her out on turn 1. She doesn't get the plus 2 there, but then every other turn of the game, which is normally 5 more turns, she'd get another 2 power. So that's 11 power for 1 cost, theoretically, if everything goes smoothly and your opponent doesn't play into that location. So we always just like to kind of start out general impressions. Thoughts about this card? How does it stack up? And we will turn it over to you first, Nina. Would love to just hear your general impressions of Nebula.
I mean, she seems really, really good to me because even say like you put it down on turn 1, it just puts pressure on your opponent to play into that lane. And any turn they don't play into that lane, she gains 2 power. And even if it's just 1 turn, it's already a 1/3, and 1/3 is honestly not too bad. And if you can manage to put her in a flooded location or say Sanctorium or something, she's just gonna carry you the whole that whole location. She's gonna win. But obviously she is weak to Killmonger.
Yep. Killmonger and what's that other card we never play with that destroys
Elektra.
Cost cards? Elektra. Yeah.
Oh.
We always forget about Elektra.
I have seen call on Twitter. I've seen people say we should play Elektra again.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Shadow King.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. All right, we get one more on the list.
We're coming up with all these weaknesses. Yeah. The only one I've been seeing so far is Killmonger. But there's some interesting things to play around here. Den, what are your general thoughts on Nebula?
I agree with a lot of things that Nina said. I think that the biggest takeaway from the card is as soon as the opponent doesn't play 1 turn on the lane, you get a 1/3, which is what you expect out of most 1-cost without an effect. I guess no effect would be 1/4 because you would compare it to Zero Blade or that kind of card. But as soon as we get 2 turns out of Nebula, we're talking Titania, which is amongst the best 1-cost in the game. 3 turns, we're talking Ebony Mo, and you might want to read the ongoing text on that one so you compare. And I mean, I've done the 1/11 once because of Storm and my opponent not playing on it. And honestly, just feels stupid. When you get 1/11, you're just like, okay, well, Nebula just solo the lane. I'm very happy about that. So I think for now, we're mostly looking at the power, and we're already kind of impressed by the card. But I think once we're going to see even more of the synergies, like refined decks and things like this, I think Nebula ends up in the discussion with the likes of Sunspot, Iceman, and that kind of cards where, I'm missing a 1-cost. Let's try Nebula. I think this is where she fits right now.
Yeah, great thoughts. Thank you both for sharing. Yeah, I think Nebula has seemed a very strong 1-cost card. One of the stronger season pass cards that we've seen in the last couple of months, I would argue. Definitely stronger than Nimrod. I think Hitmonkey was a pretty good card. I still think Hitmonkey will have more potential unlock with things like Kitty Pryde, etc. Later in the month. But I think Nebula, really kind of stands on her own and is a strong card. This is something I always think about, right? When we get these new cards, I'm like, is this a card that you can like build a deck around partially and like help you win the game, or is it just a good card? Is it more just a good general card to include in lots of decks? I don't know if either of you have a thought on that. Is it just a good all-purpose card, or are you going to build decks specifically around Nebula to try to win?
Do you want to go first then?
Sure. I'm not gonna give any decks because I know Nina probably has more like spice to offer, but I'm gonna go with a very general answer, which is I think it's both. I think it's in the discussion, as I said before, of just I need a one cost. Let's try Nebula in that deck. And I also think like there are cards that obviously synergizes with Nebula. Like we mentioned Storm already, but basically like any annoying card, just play Cosmo on Nebula's lane. And there are a lot of decks that are just like, all right, I cannot play on that lane anymore. Play Armor, and a Destroy deck cannot play on that lane anymore. There are a lot of good decks where if you just play the right tech card there, and you don't even have to wait to play it as a punish, you just play it proactively and be like, all right, that lane is locked for you. And Nebula is just going to put in the work. So I don't think we're going to have like a Nebula deck like a lot of people talked about, like the Guardians of the Galaxy. Now we know the opponent's going to play there. We're going to punish. But I think Nebula has enough synergy that once we know we want Nebula as the one cost of the deck, it's going to open a few cards where we're going to be like, oh, because I have Nebula, I can play this, I can play that. So it's not going to be a deck, but more like small packages of 2-3 cards, which Nebula can unlocks and makes your deck better at running.
Yeah, I think that's
I agree. I was going to say the exact same thing, basically. I was going to say it all depends on whether you want to play for fun or you want to play to win games. Because if you want to play for fun, you can try to make like a theme deck with Guardians of the Galaxy, and then mentioned playing Cosmo in the lane, which means you can't really play any of the Guardians anymore.
Yeah, don't put Cosmo in the Guardian deck. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know. Maybe. Cosmo kind of belongs in the Guardians of the Galaxy universe.
True.
But yeah, I think she's just going to be good in any deck. Kind of like Jeff. Any deck you can kind of stick Jeff in, and he just works.
He's just a good 2-drop,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Nebula is an interesting card. You guys have mentioned some of the build arounds, right? I've seen a lot of people doing kind of a lockout strategy, right? You're playing Professor X, you're playing Storm, you're doing these things, playing tech cards down, right? You're trying to do some control to really kind of force your opponent's hand to play suboptimally and kind of let you win the lane easily, right? So I've seen a lot of that. I'm curious what other things you guys have seen. One thing I've seen that's interesting is kind of the people call a lot of different things, but like the have some crap deck, right? Where you're sending rocks across, you're using Viper to send stuff across, right? You're kind of like locking out a lane that way. And then you put, you have Nebula down there, so they can't play cards there. You're filling their lane, and maybe you're throwing a Mojo in there because their lane's going to be filled. So then you get the Mojo off, right? There's a lot you can do there. I don't know if you guys have seen something like that, or you've seen other decks that you've seen people trying out with this card.
Well, I haven't really played yet because the season starts at 4 a.m. for me. So I haven't actually bought the season pass yet. But I imagine the clogging deck would be pretty fun with her. But you might have to invest too many resources into clogging that one lane.
Yep.
When you don't have to. But yeah, I love a good clogging deck. So definitely something to try out.
Yeah. Dan, what have you seen?
Well, I've seen that one. I think it's the one of the most popular I've seen with Nebula, at least. And otherwise, personally, I've mostly been trying decks which didn't have a good one-drop after the Sunspot nerf. And one that's been sticking out to me is Discard, because I feel like Storm is really good in Discard, because Storm works as a Morbius follow-up to protect from Enchantress or stuff like that, or works as a Dracula preemptive. Like, if you have Morbius and Dracula on a lane where the opponent can play there, it's very likely you're going to win that lane, because both of these can grow to like stupid amount of numbers. And Nebula just works at the one cost, and she's just like, yeah, I'm the third one. Just play Storm with me, and that kind of works. So I've been impressed of Nebula in Discard, and it kind of solved the problem of the deck where you were like, I need to play Sunspot in a deck where I don't really want to skip, or you would just default play Iceman when Electro Ramp isn't so popular anymore. So I like her there, and it's a full pool 2/3 deck, so I think anyone can play this one.
Yeah, good takes. I'm excited to see Nebula. I mean, I played a lot of Hitmonkey at the beginning of the season. I think Nebula I'm probably going to stick with a little bit longer and try out a few more things. I'm also going to come back to Hitmonkey later this month when Kitty Pryde comes back in. I'm interested to try that out. But yeah, I think overall a great value. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I think I'm going to bring it up just because it's on my mind. You know, I think unfortunately I see comments online on social media, which, you know, always take with a grain of salt, right? But I see people in the community saying like they think Second Dinner is this, you know, they're trying to like cheat us out of our money. You know, people are saying, oh, the Kitty Pryde's been fixed for weeks, but they didn't bring her back because she's a counter to Nebula, or
oh wow, that's real actually.
Well, yes, but also I don't think that's necessarily what they're doing. But
I don't think it's true. I just didn't think about Kitty Pryde that way, but that's actually very true.
Yeah, but and kind of this constant thing of like, oh, they're gonna nerf Nebula after the season's over because then everybody will have bought her. So I don't know. It's a little disappointing to me to just kind of see that negativity. Obviously, it's kind of in smaller circles. I don't think everybody thinks that, but I don't know. Do you guys deal with that in your communities, or just see a lot of that as well? It just kind of makes me kind of bummed out when people are just kind of. I'm like, why are you posting this? Why are you being part of the community if you think, you know, Second Dinner's out to get you? They're the boogeyman. So do either of you deal with that?
You know, we're collectible card gamers, and the one thing we all love to do is complain.
Yeah.
This is so real. I mean, people like with the collection syndrome have a problem. If we have everything, we're not happy because we have nothing to collect. And if we don't have everything, we're not happy because we don't have everything. So it's like...
But I noticed with Hearthstone as well. There's always something to complain about. And I've seen it with Marvel Snap. I think in the beginning, the community was a little bit more positive. But as the community, you know, grew and there were more people joining like social media and Reddit, there's been a lot more complaints. If it's not Zabo, if it's not Silver Surfer, it's Zabo. If it's not Zabo, it's Shuri. If it's not Shuri, it's... Oh, it was Leader as well. I mean, Leader was justified. If it's not that, then it's Galactus. Oh, Sandman. Must not forget the Sandman. There's always something we like to complain about. But we're never happy, ever.
But if we had nothing to complain about, doesn't that mean the game is just boring? Like, to me, if there's literally nothing to complain about, I think it just means the game is dull. Like,
yeah, or you're not invested in wanting it to be better, right?
I mean, I think the sweet spot is when you always have something to complain about, but it changes fast enough that it never becomes like real frustration. We're frustrated because we want to win, and there's the card that prevents us from doing so. But if that card changes, and I guess we'll talk about it a little bit like later with the OTA patches, as long as that complaining has a new target regularly enough, I don't think it's a problem. But I also think like trying to make people not complain in the card game community, as Nina said, is a dream. I don't think that will ever happen, and we have to learn to deal with it.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible.
Yeah, well, those are great.
Complaining too. I agree with that as well. Like, it's just that's in the DNA of a card gamer.
Yeah, those are great takes. That I like.
We'll complain we didn't draw well if there's nothing to complain about anyway. So like, and you'll never take this one away from us.
Yeah, and also name one card gamer who considers themselves lucky. We always think that we're the unluckiest players ever.
Yes, yeah. There's like 100 unluckiest player, and there's like 0 luckiest. Like the balance on this is completely off.
Yeah. I guess if we're all the unluckiest, then we're all really the luckiest, right? That's yeah. No, that puts things into perspective. I appreciate that. I like what you said. I like what you both said, but I like the thought of, you know, complaining about something shows that we're invested, right? It's not because we hate the game. It's because we want the game to always be better. And Second Dinner does as well, right? So they're constantly striving for being better. But yeah, there's always going to be something that needs an adjustment. Once one thing gets better, then we're going to notice that other thing that we kind of ignored for a while, right? And we'll probably talk about that here. Actually, in this next topic, I'd love to transition here, which is I just want to talk generally, if my slide will come, Season Pass. This is just something that I've been thinking about over the last couple of days. Again, you know, I like the Season Pass structure personally. I think it's a good value generally. You get the variants, the cards, the credits, the gold, right? All of these things. But I think now that like the game has gotten more balanced, which is good in my opinion, right? I think they're doing better in that department. I think one of the things I'm noticing and maybe complaining about is I think the season pass, specifically the season pass caches, are getting a little stale. I think it's something they've maybe said before, like, oh yeah, we need to revisit those and make those better. You're not the best. People complain about them. But I think people have been so focused on, like you say, Nina, like Shuri, Sandman, all these things that we kind of have just left that by the wayside. But I'm curious if you guys feel similarly. Do you think, we're due for kind of a revamp of the season pass rewards? What would you like to see changed? Just anything in that department. Den, we'll go to you first.
So we're talking specifically like the caches once we're past level 50?
Correct. But if you have other thoughts of just general season pass rewards as well.
It's really tricky because I think the better you're going to make the season pass and the wider the gap between people purchasing it and those deciding to skip is going to widen. And you don't want the gap to be too wide because otherwise the complaint that the game is pay to win will actually be real. So I think first it's important to keep in mind that some people are not purchasing it. And we can't just give a competitive advantage to those who do. But in that regard, I think like the improvement could be like probably on the variant, the titles, these kind of things that have become a real part of Marvel Snap over the last months. I mean, I'm amazed at how much posting a variant can drive people crazy and discuss about it. And like I've seen people have long conversation about what's the best border for a card. Like I didn't think that was possible as a conversation, but like we're talking like 25 messages kind of conversation. So I think this is definitely where I would work on. Like I've seen people mention like tokens or that kind of things in the caches. I personally am against it because once again, that's going to widen the gap competitive wise. So, but I think they could make the season caches feel a little bit more unique through like being able to personalize your collection or maybe like specific variants that you could only get in those. Like the event, like they said, they were not going to announce the steampunk, these kind of special variant events because then people save and they're not using the credits and like it creates kind of a gap in the credit usage. And I think that's a good direction for season passes. Like there's like one specific, like I don't know, I'm thinking like golden ticket kind of thing. Like they put just 10 of that variant for the season in the caches and some people would get it and they'll create like a ton of like attraction around it. Like that would be my take on it. Like I don't think there's too much to be done also.
Okay. Appreciate the take. Nina, what are your thoughts on the season pass?
I honestly would like to see boosters being removed from season caches because they're, I think, one of the most common things you can get. And you get that from just playing the game. Like, you literally play 2 games and you can get 10 boosters for a card. And it's a card that you actually play. So I feel like if you're opening a booster, it's just a waste of a cash. And I don't know if you guys seen, but I did a video last season opening 54 season caches. And the odds of getting a variant is 5%.
And there's no PD timer on those.
Guess how many variants I got?
So you should have got, if I'm not mistaken, you should have gotten at least 2 if it's 5%, because that's 1 in 20.
What do you think?
I'm either guessing it's 0 or you got a lot.
Yeah, like there's a bait in one of the 2 directions. So Bruce, pick one, I'll pick the other.
0. I'm gonna say 0.
Okay, then I'm gonna say I'm gonna say 5, which is like more than double.
It was 0.
Okay, yeah, I mean he picked it, so
so it felt really, really bad. And I got a bunch of boosters. I'm not gonna use like 10 boosters. What am I gonna do with 10 boosters? Nothing, right? I feel like maybe we could do a bit of a revamp of like collector's reserves and season caches. So if we remove titles and avatars, which no one likes to open from collector's reserves, and put them maybe in, season caches, that could maybe change it up a little bit, and just remove boosters from season caches completely. And also, I had the thought that's eluding me right now. Oh, I did say, I do think that we can't make the season caches rewards too good. Like Dan said, people would complain about it being too much pay to win. And also, there are people who purchase the season pass, but don't actually try to get too many season caches. There are more casual players that just try to finish the season pass. And we don't want more casual players to feel the FOMO, don't want them to feel like they have to grind in order to get these good rewards. So there needs to be a balance between like they need to be good but not too good.
Yeah. It's tricky. I think you both make great points. I personally agree with the boosters claim. I mean, occasionally it works out, right? Sometimes we're lucky, even though we say we're not lucky, right? And sometimes we get just the right boosters for a card we've been wanting to upgrade. That's happened to me a couple of times. Doesn't happen all the time. But yeah, sometimes I just get I get boosters for cards I haven't played with literally in 3 months, and it's like, well, I wish that would have been a different reward. I wish that would have been 50 credits, right? That's more useful to me. So I'd argue that that would be a good change. One thing that I know, I believe is on the second inner roadmap, right, are collectible, like the reactions. I don't know what they officially call them, like the Spider-Man pointing and stuff like that. Emotes, yes, thank you. They've at least kind of put that on their thinking about section of their roadmap. It's not in development, right? They've at least put it on at one time. I could be speaking wrong, Den. I'm right? Does that sound right to you?
No idea, to be honest.
Okay. I was looking for one of you to confirm.
I think it was in their survey. Remember, they sent out a survey to everyone, and they were asking whether people would be interested in more emotes or something like that.
Yeah. I feel like maybe it was on one of their roadmap pictures, but now I'm doubting myself. But point I'm trying to make is, I wonder if there'd be other interesting cosmetics or things like that could replace boosters, right? So maybe it feels a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with what either of you saying. I think the most important takeaway that you both have shared is, it's really tricky because you can't just be like, okay, we're going to put 20% drops for variants, and they're going to be unique variants, and we're going to put collector's tokens in there, right? Then all of a sudden it's a grind. You have to get 50 season caches, and if you're not paying for it and you can't play a lot, right, then you just enjoy the game less because you're probably seeing everybody get these cool things you're never going to get, right? And so it's moments like this that I'm grateful I'm not a game designer, because I don't know what I would do. Glad it's the team at Second Dinner that has to figure it out and not us. But yeah, I think it's worth revisiting personally. I think the team should look at it, but who knows if and when they will, and what they'll do. Go ahead, Nina.
I have
yes.
I also have a point to make. So the reason I feel like the boosters in season caches are counterintuitive is, I mean, any person who gets to level 50 of season pass is a bit of a grinder, right? You already play the game so much that you're getting plenty of boosters. You probably don't need any more boosters from season caches, You've played enough to get to level 50, and I just don't feel like boosters are enough of a reward, honestly.
Yeah, I do agree with the boosters. Is like there's a way to get them, and the thing is, no matter how they're gonna give them out, I don't think it's ever gonna be better than grinding them yourself, because that's the only way you actually target those boosters. So I think boosters have to go, and they need to find some other currency to make it feel appealing.
Not
for
another
players.
currency, please.
But I mean, not a currency introduce a new way of interacting and doing things like this, but maybe I don't know, we talked about cosmetics. I don't know, collect new cubes that you could click on, collect new kind of stuff. But yeah, boosters have to go. That's basically the take here.
I'm glad you all agree.
Yeah, you're saying some kind of cosmetic currency, maybe that you can unlock titles, avatars with, maybe. I'm not sorry, now I was about to go to the next thing, but now my brain's stuck on that. I think that'd be interesting. I think that would give you more choice, so you don't get the avatars and the titles you don't want, which is interesting, right? But yeah, but then people would probably say, oh, I'm getting too many cosmetic cubes, right? If that's what the currency was called. So going back to there's always going to be something to complain about, and we're all not going to be perfectly happy. So
well, good, then you'll give us more topics for podcasts.
Exactly.
Yeah, we all job security,
endless content,
right? Yeah. More content and less content. That's good. That's going to be my new
that's a great
my new tagline.
I love that.
We are going to take just a quick ad break, and we'll be right back with more topics. Hey all, I wanted to take a quick moment to talk to you about MarvelSnapZone.com. Marvel Snap Zone is a one-stop shop for everything Marvel Snap on the internet. They have new articles nearly every day that cover deck building, strategy, card breakdowns, etc. They have a great collection tracker tool and a deck list builder that works off of that collection tracker so that you can know what decks you can build with your current card collection. They have guides and deck lists for all level of players and all collection level of players. Make sure to go to marvelsnapzone.com and check it out now. Okay, we are back.
Music.
Yeah. I'd love to say that I wrote it, but it's free music off the internet, so what we all like to have. So
It's very groovy.
yes,
Love it.
yeah. We will continue on here. Obviously, this topic's been covered by other content creators, and just on our weekly cadence with the podcast, we're talking about it now. But love to just spend a couple minutes to talk about the first OTA. Well, I guess it's technically the second OTA balance patch, right? But it's the first of kind of we're gonna have weekly OTA balance patches at least for the next 4 or 5 weeks. And so interested to hear your thoughts on this. I'll briefly go over the changes. Lizard retains the same stat line, but his ongoing ability removes 4 power from him if your opponent fills up their side of the board. Shanna has gone from a 4-2 to a 4-4, retaining the same ability. Sandman has gone from a 5-5 to a 5-3, retaining the same ability. And Enchantress has gone from a 4-4 to a 4-6, retaining the same ability. I have thoughts. Want to hear your thoughts first, though. Nina, we'll go to you first this time. What are your thoughts about these changes? What stands out to you? And do you feel like these were good changes?
I feel like half of these changes were, quite expected. So the Sandman nerf and Shanna buff. It's what the community has been calling for ages. But the Lizard and Enchantress nerf were quite buff. It was nerf and buff. Were quite surprising to me, especially the Enchantress one. I feel like she was already quite good as she was, and giving her the extra power just made her basically auto include in so many decks. Because even if your opponent is not playing any ongoing cards, then she's a 4-6, which is pretty good, for a 4-drop.
Yeah.
So I honestly just added her. I was seeing so many ongoing decks on ladder. I just added her to my discard deck, and she worked out pretty well. And also, I think people were really freaking out about the Lizard nerf. A bit of an overreaction, in my opinion. I mean, how often is your opponent actually going to fill the board, and especially in difficult locations or stormed locations?
Yeah, especially with Enchantress buffed to cancel it at worst.
I know.
Yep. I honestly, I think, I've been playing a bunch since last week when the OTA patch. I think I've maybe seen Lizard get the -4 like 2 times, right? Whether I'm playing or my opponent, it hasn't happened a ton, right? So yeah, agree there. I think the Lizard reaction was kind of unwarranted. Yeah, I think it was a little too dramatic, but yeah, I want to talk for a second about Enchantress, Sandman. Enchantress, but I think it's interesting, in the notes that the developers kind of gave us on these changes, obviously they were seeing Enchantress see less play than some of the other tech cards. Ongoing decks were definitely kind of ruling the meta, and you could argue they still are. There's a lot of good ongoing cards out there that are seeing a lot of play. So they wanted to, make Enchantress a more viable option to counter those. I think there's been some discussion, maybe 4-6 is a stretch. Maybe this is going to come back down to 4-5. Who knows, right? We'll see. If they twisted the knob a little bit too much. But I think it's interesting. One of the things I've seen them say and the community say is, Sandman, if Sandman gets out early on turn 4 with a wave, right? You play wave on 3, Sandman on 4. It kind of just felt really discouraging if obviously, that kind of locked you out from playing your deck. But this makes Enchantress a little bit more of a viable option to spend your whole turn 5 playing to kind of shut down that Sandman. I think that's a really interesting interaction. I haven't seen that myself or had that interaction, but I think it's interesting. But Dan, I want to get your thoughts on Enchantress change, but also any of these changes.
Well, it's a little weird. Like, to me, the Enchantress buff wasn't so much to make the card incredibly stronger. It did, but it was more to remind everyone that the card exists, and Patriot and all these like weak to Enchantress deck are still like counterable.
Yep.
And I think that's what it did. Like it put Enchantress on the map for most people, and it gave a great opportunity to show that the card was still a great card in the end, and was still completely fine to run. So to me, the buff did its job, and I kind of agree that it. I don't really know why it went to 4/6. 4/5 would have been enough. But yeah, like what I really like about these OTA, it's not necessarily the buffs. It's like every week the developers can put some cards like up front and can say, look, this card still exists.
Yep.
You can still use them, and that's kind of the way I think OTA should work. Because if they completely shatter the meta every week, people are gonna be mad. Like in the end, although there are a lot of like competitive people or like content creators that consume the game a ton, like every week we play hours and hours, the vast majority of Marvel Snap people are probably just doing quests and maybe even losing some quests on the way. And if you change everything every week, they're just gonna get probably bored at it because they're never gonna be able to keep up.
Yeah.
So for the majority of Marvel Snap players to be able to keep up, you need to have like slight changes, but make these slight changes impactful enough that they tell everyone, look, this still exists. This is still an option. You can still do this. You can still do that. And I think this is what they were doing with the Enchantress buff, even though I don't really understand why +2.
Yep. Yeah. I think just kind of turning it back to Shauna. I never know if it's Shanna or Shauna. I say it both. But
say Shanna.
Shanna was kind of unplayable, right? I mean, some people would still play her, but she needed to be stronger, right? And I think I love seeing a card kind of be brought back from the shadows to be like, oh, I can actually try this card out now. I could play it. I can try to build around it a little bit more. I don't think Shanna's she's not the best 4-drop in the game all of a sudden, right? Which is not what they're trying to do, but it makes it kind of brings up the bottom, and that's what they're trying to do with these OTAs. They're trying to bring up the very lowest cards and just kind of nudge down the highest cards, right? To just kind of move everything more towards the middle. Everything's playable. Again, I don't know if there's ever a reality in any card game where you can make everything truly playable or meaningful, right? But I think if you can make 85% of the cards playable, I think that's a good spot, somewhere in there. I think that's a good goal to shoot for, right? Curious, just if these are the cards we had changed last week. If you each could pick one card to see either a buff or a nerf this next week, what would it be?
Oh, out of these 4 cards?
No. Just another card in the game. Yeah.
Oh, just putting us on the spot like that. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I did this to the guest last week, so.
I mean, okay. The answer is obvious, right? Everyone's been calling for it.
Okay, go for it then.
Is it Crystal?
I don't think Crystal deserves a buff, to be honest.
What?
I think I wouldn't be shocked if she did, but I don't think it's necessary. Like the problem isn't the card; it's the ability. I mean, make Crystal a 4/6. I don't think I play her. The ability is still too difficult to play. 4/6, she will still be compared with Enchantress, White Queen, and all that kind of things. Like, what's the deck that wants to play Crystal in the first place? And how is this deck better if Crystal becomes 4/6 or even 4/7? As long as we don't have
played in Galactus decks and maybe negative decks, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say negative.
Yeah, but now she's a 4/6. Do we play her?
Yeah, that's even worse than negative.
Well, I'm saying, what if she was like a 2 or a 3 cost with lower power?
That I could start discussing, but I don't think they can make that. Like, I don't think they're gonna make that happen in the OTAs. I think they're gonna go for like more controlled buffs. I think. I'm not even sure, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, they have said they can't adjust cost or power, right? So they can adjust numbers and numbers in the abilities like Lizard. They can't change his ability, what it does, but they could change the -3 to a -4 in these OTA bounce patches. Obviously, we didn't see any cost changes last week. But in my opinion, I think Crystal would be served more of a buff of like lowering the cost. So it makes it more versatile. You can play it earlier in the game. You can play it later in the game without spending all your resources, right? Because if it was like a negative deck, like you play negative on 3, maybe you've got Psylocke on 2, negative on 3. If you could play Crystal and another card on 4, right? I think that's more interesting to me, right?
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Make her a 2/4 and everyone will play her.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yes, that's a crystal buff I can get behind.
yeah. I think in the past, a lot of people, including myself, have called for like a Quake buff, but at this point,
I would love that.
I think I've seen a little bit more Quake play in the last few weeks, but still not a ton, right? And maybe that's just because some of the new locations and featured locations, things like that. But I don't really know what you would do to Quake. I don't know if Quake just becomes like a 2/4, or if did you change the ability, which would obviously require a full patch, but change the ability so you can play her anywhere and rotate the locations instead of just in the middle. I don't know if that's too powerful though. That might be a little crazy.
That would be too powerful, I think. But if they do it, I'm up for it.
It could be fun.
I love chaos.
The locations are the core of Marvel Snap, so
yep.
It's fun to try that kind of concept. Like, I think I'd rather have them try it, break the game for a week, change it the next week, than it never happens ever. Like, I'm always more for like, go ahead, break something for a couple of days, we'll survive, instead of hear complaints for like months or years.
Yeah.
Honestly, I like Quake already. I don't think she needs maybe, like you said, make her a 2/4. But I honestly love her effect so much because people never expect her. If you play her, say, on last turn, then it can change the whole game.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. And like I said, for months I was saying, yeah, Quake buff. But now I don't know if she needs it quite as much. I think with other things kind of balancing out, I think Quake becomes slightly more viable, but we'll see. Obviously it's total speculation to guess or hope for what cards will be changed. So I think they've shown is that we'll see some ones we anticipate, right? Like Sandman, we anticipated, Shauna, but then I think they're going to throw curveballs at us, things we don't expect, and I think that's a good thing, right? They're the game designers. They have the data, the numbers more than any of us do, right? And so they know probably what needs the most help, even if our perception is something needs to be changed. So
do we think that Red Skull is going to be buffed?
Oh, you mean revert?
Yes, because, think about it. They nerfed him twice. It didn't really stop Shuri decks. And then they nerfed Shuri, and now you almost never see Shuri anymore. And nobody plays Red Skull anymore. Ooh. So I feel like there's going to be some...
I feel like they should at some point. I feel like, again, he was originally 15, right?
15, and now
he went to 13.
12.
And then,
first 13, then 12.
He was 15 -2, went to 13 -1, and then 12 -1, something like that. Or maybe it was 13 -2?
No, it was 13 -1.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So yeah, I mean, I definitely could see that going back up to like 14 or 15. I think in that case, you do need to have the -2 back again, right? Not the -1, but I think it makes Red Skull more viable as like a card in
standalone card,
right?
without Shuri.
Yeah. And they even said when they nerfed him that second time, they said, we know he's not the problem, but until we can change Shuri, we're gonna nerf him, right? So they even said that. So my hope would be they would kind of go back based on that and make him a little bit better. But
yeah, I'm calling it. Should we try to call like the cards that are gonna get changed in the next OTA?
We're trying to do that with friends on another YouTube channel. It's so difficult to do because it's really easy to say like what we wish or like but then you just think about the domino effect and then suddenly you're stuck in a loop forever because every change brings another card and everything. So
yeah,
it's actually so difficult to do.
Yeah. It is tricky because it's like, like we were talking about Quake, right? If you like make a change to Quake, then all of a sudden it just like the whole game changes in some ways, right? If you can just like change from any location to locations, then it's like all of a sudden people are going to be playing Quake in tons of decks, right? And
good. We should.
Well, yeah. Again, this is where I start sweating and I start saying like, I'm glad my job is in software, but not in game development, because game development sounds a lot more stressful than just working on other types of software. But I could see Red Skull. I think I honestly could see that one in this week or next week. I could see that being one that's realistic. I don't know if we'll see the Quake one. I could see the Crystal one. That one sounds more realistic to me. Kind of where Crystal's been at. But then after that, I'm like, okay, those are the two I would maybe expect. But where are the two surprises, right? I don't know. Well, is it a nerf for a card?
Buffs. Right? Like they could go for nerf. I honestly like Wave and Sarah can be nerfed any week, and I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
like the amount of time they've dodged it is impressive.
Yeah, Yeah, you could drop a stat off of either Wave or Sarah, I think. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe this week we're gonna see Wave and Sarah have nerfs, and we're gonna see Red Skull and Crystal buff. We just called it. I don't know.
Yeah,
and then I get to say, "I told you so."
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
yes.
Then
you can invite Nina again and just say like game developer Nina.
Oh,
yeah.
Also, I wanted to say I love the way you sell developers. Then I'm gonna call them like that as well, developers.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. I think I'm excited. I'm excited for this to be a weekly thing. I wonder where we'll feel at the end of May, right? Will we feel like tired of things changing every week? I'm not saying we will. I'm just curious, right? After we've had this happen 5 weeks in a row, where will Second Dinner feel, or what will they feel? How will we feel, right? It'll be interesting to look back on this conversation in a month and say like, oh, keep it coming. Yeah, we love these, or like, hey, can we do this every other week? It's too much, right? We never know until we experience it, right? So
we definitely need some way of letting the players know that there's been an OTA patch, because at the moment, unless people are keeping up on Twitter or Discord or Reddit, they have no idea that the cards have been changed. And the way they find out is they queue up into a game and they see the change. And that's not a good way to do it, is it?
I've seen at least one person post online with one of the 2 OTA patches. I can't remember if it was this one or the first one. And they said, why did this thing happen in my game? They like shared a screenshot, and it was because the card changed, but they had no idea, right? They're just like asking on some, help, like on the Facebook or on Reddit or somewhere, like, why is this? I can't figure out why my card had less power, right? It's like because the card changed, right?
Yeah.
So they're trying to, it's just funny. So hopefully they can message out that a little bit better. Maybe show pictures of the card in the game as you like on the home screen of like, hey, these are the cards that changed. I would like that. We're almost out of time here, and I do want to just spend a couple of minutes here. We always try to shoot for about 45 to 50 minutes here. I want to talk a little bit about the meta. Dan, you put out this updated list, I want to say yesterday.
Well, I write on Sunday, but it comes out on Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, Monday, Tuesday. Monday, if you are a subscriber on MarvelSnapZone.com, a member, and then Tuesday, I believe, if you're not. Pay to win. I just want to talk through this a little bit. Again, we only have a couple minutes here. The things I noticed as I was looking through this, there are several things that have dropped. I feel like more than normal. That's my perception. We have 5 kind of that have dropped down a little bit. And I feel like the tier 2 is pretty big comparatively, which I think is a good thing.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I just want to get general thoughts. Dan, obviously, we'll give you a minute, and then Nina, I want to hear your thoughts on what you're seeing. Is your experience kind of matching this list of what we're seeing?
So the biggest thing is, after changes, the metagame is always messed up in a way or another, just because while we're trying to figure out the best decks, people just go to their comfort picks. And typically, the decks that have been around the most, so Sarah Surfer, so Deathwave, so Doomwave, like decks that we've heard about a lot before the changes, are going to come more naturally to us because they're already in our mind. Like, we're like, oh, I don't know what. And suddenly, like, you're just going to think about those decks that you faced a lot, or that you've seen content creators talk about a lot, or that you've played yourself. So I think it's natural that these decks are found at the top, just because people are going to gravitate towards them more often. Then for the bigger tier 2, I think this is one of the best like week to play Marvel Snap if we're talking like pure competition or that kind of thing, simply because after changes it's messed up. And the 2 biggest changes this week were Sandman and Enchantress, which kind of removed ongoing, but it wasn't like ongoing is dead. It became ongoing is risky. And I think that's the line that we want to be at. Like, we want the best decks to be risky to play because everyone expects them. And we have an obvious way to counter them. If the best deck is obvious and has no counter, we end up in the Shuri Zero meta. And after a week, we're all bored of it. If we end up in a complete mess where it's just play whatever you like, nothing is good, nothing is bad, people are going to be frustrated because they don't have a way to gain a competitive edge over the competition. Right now, it feels great because decks are good, but every deck has a risk. You play Serra, you're exposed to Sandman and Wave. You play Wave, you're exposed to Sandman. You play Sandman, you're exposed to Patriot. You play Patriot, you're exposed to Enchantress. And I think, personally, this are the metagames that I like the most, because this is where you have to be like, you have to reason. Why do I play this deck? Do I think it's a good deck? Is it just I like this deck? Do I think it counters another popular deck? So it pushes players to like take a stand. And I think that's good in card games. Like, you take a stand and then you play, and then if you're right, you get rewarded. And then if you're wrong, you just go back to the drawing board, pick another deck, and keep looking for it.
Yeah. Nina, what are your thoughts on this, and what have you been seeing over the last week?
Oh, I agree with Dan. This is probably, I haven't played a lot last week, but when I did play, I saw a huge variety of decks. It wasn't just, Sandman Doom every single game. It wasn't like Galactus every game. It's just a bunch of different decks. And I think there are some new decks coming, well, older decks coming back, like Surfer's coming back, which is really fun to see because, Surfer's been on the back burner for ages. And I saw a lot less of Patriot, which is kind of nice. I think people are a bit scared of Enchantress these days. But I'm just happy that I can play my negative decks again without the fear of facing Sandman every single game.
Oh, yes. I'm a big Mr. Negative believer. I love Mr. Negative decks, and it's felt good to have a little bit more runway with Mr. Negative decks.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like with Mr. Negative decks as well, people stay in a lot of the time because they think, oh, I'm winning so much. There's no way they can win this, is there? And then you do.
No way they drew the inverted Iron Man and Mystique and, all the
Or
and
they
Blue
just
Marvel.
don't respect it. Like, I feel a lot of people are like, yeah, Mr. Negative is not a good deck, so I'm not going to respect it. But the thing is, Mr. Negative is not a good deck because when you don't draw Mr. Negative, you don't have a deck. But the nut draw of Mr. Negative might be one of the best deck in the game. If we could just literally pick what happens in the game, I think Mr. Negative would be tier 1.
Yeah. Yeah,
Unfortunately, we can't.
If you could play Mr. Negative every game on turn 3, like
well, played on turn 1. Project Pegasus and Peak exist.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. That happened to me in one game. That was so much fun. Yeah. It was the Peak. Yeah. And I had Mr. Negative in my hand on turn 1.
But you snap right there.
But guess what? My opponent was also Mr. Negative.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Oh dear, we are in trouble.
I always get a little nervous when it's a mere Mr. Negative because I'm like, who's gonna draw better, right? It's hard to know. Yeah, you kind of just have to go off of how well you've drawn, right? Because you have no idea what's in their hands. So, yeah, I just want to kind of summarize this by saying I think we're in a really good spot. I think this is where we've been hoping to be meta-wise in a long time, and my hope is that with weekly updates, little tweaks. Like you say, Dan, right? It kind of creates those days of like, oh, well, do I need to adjust? Do I need to change stuff up? Right. And we get a little lost, but then I think we can kind of quickly find ourselves again. Right. Hopefully it doesn't throw us off too much, but I just want to see this kind of tier 2 and 3 get bigger and bigger. Right. We still have those couple decks at the top, the tier 1 decks that are just slightly have an edge above the others, and that's okay. But if there's a lot of decks that you can win and you can get cubes with, then I think that's where we all want Marvel Snap to be. So really exciting.
Yes, and about like tier 3 and stuff like that. For now, it's not that big because unfortunately I'm working alone on this and I have to make choices on which deck I'm alighting. But we're in the discussion to make the list much bigger to also represent decks that are not that popular, but still have a role to play in the metagame. So the list should be much bigger in the weeks to come.
Yeah, awesome. I'm sad not to see Negative there.
It is in the silent performers.
Yep.
There's a Galactus Negative deck this week that had, I think, 0.28 cube rate.
Wait, we're still playing Negative Galactus even after the Shuri nerf?
I don't know. Well, there wasn't Shuri in the deck.
There wasn't. Well, I mean, it doesn't work
the top curve was Galactus, Null, and Zola. And I guess the person was just trying to go Galactus into Null or Galactus Zola together on turn 6.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the deck right here. It's Yondu, Psylocke, Zabu, Mystique, Mr. Negative, Wong, Iron Man, Black Panther, Jane Foster, Arnim Zola, Null, and Galactus.
It was such a big high roll. I tried the deck. I couldn't get myself to keep both Wong and Panther. It was just too much. But when the deck works, it's incredibly fun.
Oh yeah, I mean, that sounds crazy, right?
Jane Foster in a negative deck honestly feels like cheating.
True.
Yeah. Well, it's that classic. If you have both in hand, right? You snap at the beginning of the game if you know you're gonna have both. Yeah.
I really
like even if you don't get
someone.
negative out on 3, it's still okay, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, one day, like if someone does it, I really need to talk to someone who actually stays in games against someone that went negative into Jane Foster and snapped. Why are you still in there? I have
someone
no
did
idea.
that to me.
Yeah, I don't understand. Why are we still playing this game? There's 0 shots you're not gonna be high rolled.
I mean, some people just never retreat once they reach infinite.
True.
Yeah. Ever.
Okay. Then I need to play this deck before infinite. I'm gonna play this deck at the 90s rank, where it's like the most competitive. And if one person stays when I do it, I need to add them. I need a friend. I need to find them on Twitter, and we need to have a talk.
Yeah, just go post their username on Twitter and just say, I'm trying to find this person. They need help. No.
They stayed on a negative Jane Foster hand, and I can't sleep. Like,
maybe they just want to see what happens, you know?
Maybe they're just in
it's
for the
not
combo.
all about winning.
Yeah.
True. You're right, Nina. Like,
I mean, for me it is, but
that.
some people are not like that.
We've talked about it. I mean, that's the trap of Marvel Snap is, and that's how you get better at the game is by shutting off your curiosity. Don't wonder what's going to happen on the next turn, right? Just say, no,
True.
I know I'm going to lose. Just quit now. Save myself a cube, right?
Then I'm not going to ask because that person's just going to answer like, I was having fun and I'm going to feel stupid about it. And I'm just going to be like, oh yeah. They get it. I don't.
This is a video game. I forgot.
I'm the problem.
Wait, you're supposed to have fun when playing this game?
I thought it's just about winning, right? That's
well, winning equals fun for me, so...
There wouldn't be a cube system if it wasn't about collecting cubes, right?
Yep. Well, we are just out of time. This has been a great, fun conversation. Loved having both of you on. Before we go really quickly, just want to give you each a chance to just kind of shout out where people can find you once again. Dan, if you could let listeners know where they can find you.
Well, you can mostly find me on Marvel Snap Zone, so I'm not that far. But mostly I'm going to take the occasion to kind of advertise a tournament that is going to happen starting next week. The first qualifier is on the 13th. It's Marvel Snap Zone sponsored as well. And it's aiming to be one of the biggest online tournament to date on Marvel Snap. So if anyone wants to enter, want to be a part of it, you are more than welcome, and we would love to have you. Awesome. Everything's going to be on Marvel Snap Zone. There's an article ready to explain everything about the tournament.
Awesome. Yeah, make sure to go check that out. I'm looking forward to that. It'll be fun to watch kind of how that plays out. Nina, just let listeners know where they can find you online.
You can find me at twitch.tv/Ninaisnoob or on YouTube, also Ninaisnoob. And I just want to advertise my videos a little bit. It's not just, deck guides and, meta reports and stuff, but also like really fun videos where I play games with other content creators. So that's always fun to watch. Like there's latest one I did with Regis was 21 questions with Marvel Snap cards. So he has to guess.
So difficult.
Did you try?
These are always fun because like everyone is like, yeah, like they play Marvel Snap all day. They must know. And then you're like, oh my God, we know nothing about this game.
It's so much harder than it seems. But It's fun to see people struggle.
True. Yeah. Like I think I don't know if it was the one with Regis, but I watched one of those and I was like, oh my God, I would be so bad at this.
I think you're thinking of Dexter because he struggled really hard.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it was Dexter.
You think you're going to do really good until you're in the chair,
and
then...
Yeah, that's my job. Fun. Marvel Snap is my life. What
I've
do I
seen so many people humbled.
And then they're like, what does Wadu sound when he enters the board? It's like,
What kind of question is that?
How dare you ask me this?
That sounds like a great question. Well, thank you both so much for being here.
That's a great question. Next podcast intro, so like...
Yeah, I'll just start making noises of cards. Listeners, thank you for listening. As always, we appreciate you being here, and we will catch you all in the next episode. Thanks.
Bye.
Can't Stop Snapping is a podcast written, recorded, produced, and hosted by Michael Thurman. Thanks for listening.